Good afternoon, and welcome to the Complete College America Technology Seal of Approval webinar featuring uh, Technology Seal of Approval winner, Starfish by Hobsons. My name is Danifu Elston, and I serve as Vice President for Strategy at Complete College America, where I oversee our work around momentum pathways, the Technology Seal of Approval, as well as our work around career pathways and equity/minority serving institutions. We are always excited when we get an opportunity to share news and be able to share practice that we believe will further enhance the larger college completion efforts throughout this country. Complete College America, for those of you that may not have as much familiarity, was founded almost 9 years ago, and we are an alliance of what we consider to be 44 different either states or consortia of institutions. And each of these states or consortia have made a commitment to disaggregate and share data around college completion, to work on implementing CCA game changer strategies, and really pushing the fact that college completion is a complement to the college access agenda. And so our larger mission is pretty simple. It's leveraging that alliance to eliminate achievement gaps. We want to ensure that more students across this country receive college degrees of purpose and value. And for those of you who spent some time working with us over the past, we recognize that for us we know that there are literally hundreds and maybe even thousands of reasons why students don't continue to persist and ultimately graduate. For us, we decided to focus on a few different strategies, which we refer to as our game changers. And the game changers include the following. And I would share that many individuals, as they thought about this guided pathways movement, are incorporating various components of the game changers. What we've realized over doing this a number of years is that there is actually a sequence of how all of these strategies are woven together. So it's not truly an a la carte approach, but a more seamless integration of strategies. So you will hear Complete College America speak more frequently about not just guided pathways, but momentum pathways. How do you ensure that students get a very strong start? And we believe that technology can be an accelerant to that process. So when you think about advising and administrators, 15 to finish and a momentum year is an important part of that work, as well as proactive advising. And then there's a separate strand where many faculty members, some of whom are academic advisors or professional advisors as well, are working on things like math pathways and co-requisite support. When we talk about the momentum year, we are also really highlighting the fact that there's some very important research that's taking place that highlights some of the key components of student success within that first year. So when we talk about a momentum year, we're talking about ensuring students attain or reach 30 credits within that first year, that they complete Gateway English and Mathematics, that they enter into a program of study with some level of informed choice, and that they ultimately complete some program credit hours within that major. We know that once that happens, more students are far more likely to graduate. And as I talk about technology being an accelerant to that work, we recognize that organizations like Starfish by Hobsons are at the forefront of that movement. When we started the Technology Seal of Approval in year one, it was more so just about default degree maps and easy integration of registration processes. Every year we've added a new component to the seal, and last year we added proactive advising and informed choice of major. And so we were very honored that Starfish by Hobson chose to submit, and they were selected as one of the Technology Seal of Approval winners, which is something that's extremely important to our alliance because we know so many institutions across the country are looking to do that work, and they're looking to identify partners, specifically technology partners, that can help them moving forward. So with that, we've been working with a number of individuals, an amazing committee of national experts, and our consultant, Jason Elwood, who many of you are familiar, has really been helping us lead that work and providing thought partnership with that. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the floor over to Jason, and I'm excited to hear more from Starfish by Hobson.
Thank you, Donnie Fu, and welcome everyone. When we started the program, it was really designed to collaborate with software vendors to identify technical solutions that support the GPS Direct and Purpose First efforts. And in those first 2 years, we found that there are software solutions to assist the Alliance members with not only the technology solutions, but also the implementation for both the GPS Direct and Purpose First Game Changers. We're starting our 3rd year. We're in our 3rd year now. It began on April 1st, and we've expanded out what we're doing this year with the program. Not only do we have guided pathways, informed choice, and proactive advising that we introduced last year, this year we have onboarding, predictive analytics, and scheduling, especially as they support the momentum pathways and the momentum year. Each year we've broadened out the scope of the awards really to continue to push the market and set a high bar for vendors to work towards and build complementary software, and Hobsons is a perfect example of that. The seal of approval page on the web platform describes the program for this year and last year. Alliance members can use the page to identify those previous winners, links to their case studies, profiles, as well as the functional requirements that we've used to evaluate the software products against the functional requirements that we have. And those could be a great source to support what you're doing with RFP, RFI activities, because we've basically compiled here a list of best practices. So the 3rd year began on April 1st. We're working through that now. We've separated the 3rd year into 2 submission periods to better accommodate some of the vendors' schedules. The second one will begin on July 1st, so we should have in the next couple of months some information about our first submission period. So as Donnie Fu mentioned, Hobsons is the 2017 winner of the program. And today we have Gretchen Riemenschneider. She's the Strategic Operations Manager, and Richard Calhoun, Principal Product Manager, to discuss the Starfish solution and all the efforts to advance completion and success. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them into the QA tool in the Zoom application. We'll have a few minutes at the end for questions, but now I turn over to Gretchen and Richard to introduce Hobsons and Starfish.
Jason, thank you so much. Thank you to you and Donnie Fu for setting us up today. We're really honored to be here to share with you how Starfish has partnered with CCA and committed to supporting some of their game changers. We thought one way that we could help walk you through this is by sharing a student story. So we call this the Starfish Student Success Journey. So I'll start by introducing you to our student, Julian Ibanez. He is the oldest of 6, and ever since high school, he's worked 3 jobs. He's waited tables, served as the neighborhood handyman, and picked up odd construction jobs here and there to help support his mother and younger siblings. Recently, Julian ran into an old friend from high school who was celebrating a new job himself. His friend had earned an associate's degree from the local community college that helped him land a full-time job at the local hospital, making more than Julian was making in all 3 of his jobs combined. Now, while Julian had considered college in the past, he felt that his family and work obligations made it a little overwhelming, and quite frankly, he wasn't sure he could afford it. But when talking to his friend, he mentioned that an academic advisor from the college had helped him find a scholarship and financial aid package that made tuition manageable. And at that moment, Julian decided on his next day off, he'd stop by the campus to get more information. When he walked into the enrollment center, he was greeted by the friendly face of Helen Coleman, an academic advisor at Succeed Community College. As an advisor at Succeed, Helen is accustomed to meeting with prospective students to help coach them through the enrollment process. She can provide insights into financial options and assure them as they begin their academic career. Now, since Helen's campus uses Starfish, she's able to quickly create a prospective student record to document her meetings. With the student's name, email, and birth date, Helen can search for duplicate records or create a new prospective student record that can be used to share information across the campus as necessary. The student record allows Helen to indicate the purpose of her meeting, such as enrollment advising, and she can record valuable notes like that she and Julian discussed financial aid options, how to apply for a scholarship, and she walked him through the enrollment process as well. In addition to prose notes, Helen can also check off key interactions she's completed with Julian. They discussed academic goals, study skills, and she's referred him to the financial aid office. Finally, all of these notes can be shared with other departments across the campus, like admissions and financial aid. So if he walks down the hall, those key resources will have the same information. After Julian enrolls at the institution, the information can be automatically merged with the SIS to keep a complete student profile from the very beginning. Now, Julian's appointment with Helen has given him the information he needs to take the first step towards changing his life and the life of his family members. A few weeks later, Julian's excited to receive notice of his scholarship award, and he promptly enrolls. With the scholarship and enrollment confirmation at hand, Julian sets off to the library to complete what he's considered his first homework assignment from Succeed Community College. In their email, they outlined 3 key items to help Julian get started. First, he'll start by taking a short parent soft skill assessment, which only takes him about 7 to 10 minutes. To complete it, he quickly goes through and identifies key characteristics. It's available in multiple languages and has an audio function which pronounces the words and reads the definition for him. So he feels confident that his results will be accurate. While he enjoys this journey, he also is able to take an interest survey. He can indicate items where he likes building kitchen cabinets, but doesn't really have an interest in developing new medicine. Based off of this information and his work history, parent is able to recommend a career or studies in mechanical engineering. He's happy with what he's learned, and he starts to look at the pathway it would take to obtain a career in medical or mechanical engineering. He notices that 61% of mechanical engineers have a bachelor's degree, and he begins to even consider expanding his goal to include that bachelor's as well. In addition to taking the career assessment, Julian completes the student intake form to provide additional context for the college. This might include information that's traditionally not available through the student information system, but rather stored on Post-its or sticky notes buried within the student folder. Here, he can indicate that he's working more than 40 hours a week, that he's a primary caregiver in his household, and if he has access to technology. This information will allow his institution to provide resources that are specifically designed to help students like Julian. Last but not least, Julian's going to find some time to create an academic plan. Using the information from his career recommendations, Julian sets off to find an associate's degree of engineering. Excuse me. Once Julian identifies the associate's degree of engineering, he can look to find out what courses he's taking right away. He can adjust the credits so that he's committed to taking 15 to finish, also looking at how he's taking some engineering courses in his very first term. He also notices that this associate's degree has him completing by the summer of 2019. In addition to seeing the order in which the courses are taking, Julian can look at when he's required to be on campus and at which time. As he does so, he remembers that he needs to stay home with his mom to take care of his siblings on Wednesday as his mom goes to work. So he's able to indicate the preferences or edit his preferences to select that he's not available on Wednesdays and see alternate schedules. Once he finds one that he likes, he can set that as his schedule, and he's ready to request approval from his academic advisor, Helen Coleman. Finally, he wants to set up some time to talk about his academic plan with Helen. From the Starfish Success Network, he finds Helen and can schedule a meeting. He's able to identify that he wants to discuss registration assistance, and he thinks it'll take about 30 minutes. Now that Julian's committed, he knows that he has secured time to meet with Helen. When he and Helen get together, they're able to review Julian's schedule and discuss some of the things that might help impact his first term at the institution. They can also work to assign success plans. Success plans are a accumulation of tasks or key items that might help Julian be successful here. So the institution is recommending that he explore the Shark Success Network, that he attend a new student advising session, review his financial aid information, and sign his agreement. Now Julian knows both academically what his plan is and what other additional items he can accomplish to stay on track. Once Helen and Julian have agreed on the appropriate schedule or academic plan for Julian, she can approve it either term by term or through the completion of his plan. Helen approves Julian's plan, and he's now able to register. With a simple click, Julian can register directly from the Starfish system to ensure that he's got the courses and he's on track. Sorry. With the courses underway, Julian's excited to continue his path. As classes begin to start, his mom starts to get sick, and he starts to miss a few classes. His faculty members indicate that he's not attending, and it's causing him to miss some classes or miss some assignments as well. He receives a notification directly from his phone and reaches out to get some assistance. Because of the information that Julian entered originally, the institution has been able to pair him with particular services that are appropriate. So they're recommending that Julian reach out to the tutoring center for first-generation students or look into family care services because he's the primary caregiver in his family. Once Julian's able to get the help that he needs, the academic advisors or faculty members can provide the context. So once Julian's made up the missing assignments, his faculty member can indicate that they've met with Julian, the concern was successfully addressed, and they can close the loop so that everyone knows that it's not just a black box, but Julian's getting the help that he needs. Even though Julian was able to find the help that he needed, he felt like he might still be too far behind. So unfortunately, he's withdrawn from the class. The withdrawal creates an automatic flag, and it takes Julian off track from his previously appointed plan. So the institution sends Julian an automatic flag to let him know that he can get back on track. When he goes in, he starts to be concerned. His confidence is a little shaken that he might not be able to continue in the engineering pathway. So he wants to explore other career options or other academic plan options. He thinks maybe he'll be better suited for a physics plan. So again, he finds a physics plan that might be appropriate. Once he clicks on the physics plan, he notices that it will take him off track from his original plan. There are far more math courses than he's perhaps comfortable with, and he wants to make sure that he's continuing in the math pathway that best suits his skill set. And he also doesn't want to extend his time at the institution. He can see how his plan would impact his completion date, and so he looks at perhaps recalculating what it would take to complete his engineering degree. Now, while Julian could certainly do this manually, trying to keep in mind all of the course sequencing and the requirements and in which order, Starfish can automatically update his plan and recalculate to get him back on track. He can see the downstream impacts of this change and identify which courses are moving. So similar to a GPS, it noticed that Julian was off track and can recalculate to get him back onto track to finishing in the appropriate time. Once he's recommitted to his goal, Julian is making great progress. His institution notices that he's only one course away from earning an engineering certificate, all while completing his associate's degree. He receives a notification, and he's receiving kudos from his faculty members, which are displayed within his Starfish portfolio. When he goes in, his institution identifies that he could get an engineering certificate, all while completing his associate's degree in the same time. He explores the engineering certificate program similar to as the academic pathways. He now sees that he can complete his engineering certificate with just one additional course, continue to complete his associate's degree, and he might be able to obtain additional employment and even get his employer to pay for his continued education. Last but not least, as Julian receives his certificate degree, he can search for career opportunities that are available in the local area. So now he's not only been able to receive that certificate, continue his education, but he can look for the opportunity. So when his friends and family members go to college, they won't have to say that they're the first.
Great. So while that's a great narrative and a great story, and I am not as polished as Gretchen on my presentation skills, so I'm going to kind of take you on a little bit of a detour. This is the story of the prequel, right? This is how did the institution really get to the point where they could create this pathway for Julian that supports things like 15 to finish, that supports that momentum year and offering those engineering courses in the first term to get them started, that ensures that the appropriate resources such as tutoring or family care services were available to Julian in context when he needed them. And that is the real tough work that you're doing at your institutions every day. But the good news is that through a combination of our Starfish core tool set, as well as our analytics offering, as well as our academic planning features, we can actually help you construct this pathway at your institution as well. So now I'm going to tell you the story of Dr. Veronica Moore. And so Dr. Moore came to Succeed Community College 2 years before Julian arrived there. And she knew she had a lot of tough work ahead of her. The school had really seen continuous declines in enrollment and retention had not improved. They tried several initiatives to really address those problems, particularly among those growing populations of first-time in college and Hispanic students, but they really hadn't been able to move the needle. And so Succeed was really looking to Dr. Moore to turn things around. She had been selected as provost on her platform of fostering campus-wide culture of student success and really utilizing analytics to make data-informed decisions. And so Dr. Moore knew from her previous work at other institutions that she would face some skepticism. Cultural change, campus adoption are really critical to making institutional change. So really she spent her first few months listening to those key stakeholders around campus. She really wanted to better understand their perspectives, their concerns, and hear their ideas for improvement. And I'm sure none of you have heard some of these things before, and you have great functioning institutions, but some of the things that she heard was student services felt like they were triaging students, right? Advisors wanted to work more effectively, they wanted to be proactive, but they couldn't really prioritize which students to spend their time with and was it really making a difference. Departments across the campus didn't communicate well, right? They didn't understand or in some cases trust their data. They felt like they were relying on IR or others to make sense of it, and even then they didn't even know how to use the data that they had. They were making curriculum decisions based off tradition or student feedback. But they really wanted to use enrollment and course data to plan for the future of curriculum, not react to the past. But where do you start with an initiative like that? Speaking of initiatives, IT had initiative fatigue, right? They were constantly looking at leveraging new technologies, chasing that next big thing in student success or higher education. They had so many systems on campus to support with little or no connectivity between them. So there were a lot of challenges. And even though Dr. Moore heard those challenges, and she also heard about a lot of great work happening on campus. The faculty were engaged, advising was working hard to support despite a challenging workload. IT was persistently looking at ways that they could optimize in a changing technology landscape. She knew that with the right change management, she could get everyone moving in the same direction. So this is where our tools can help, right? And so realistically, we wanted to look at how could we help Dr. Moore and her team really start from the same foundational position of knowledge and make a difference at Succeed Community College. So here's a scenario that we're going to kick to you. Succeed Community College has doubled enrollment of Hispanic males in recent years. Many are first-generation students and in need of financial assistance. There are a lot of opinions on campus that these students are not doing as well as their peers. And Dr. Moore has a meeting later this afternoon. She'd like to be armed with that information about the cohort, what the campus is doing to support them. She wants to dig deeper into the facts And an hour before that meeting, she wants to look at the tools and come with a lot of insights and share questions and ask and engage her team on potential next steps. So as we deep dive into this cohort, one of the things that there are 6 key objectives that Dr. Moore wants to uncover. One is, how has this cohort performed in the past compared to their peers? 2 is, what is the likelihood of them persisting term to term into the future? 3 is, what is their risk characteristics and behaviors? What are those things that are actually holding them back? What interventions and support systems are currently in place at the institution to help this cohort? Which of them are actually available for the students within their portal? And what courses are the biggest obstacles for students? How can we eliminate those challenges before they get to them? So we're going to start with the first one. How has this cohort performed in the past compared to their peers? So this is our benchmarks report. And what this does is it actually takes 10 years of historical data from your institution and benchmarks you across institutions that are similar to you. And so on the left, you see the unfiltered population. So this would be your entire student population. And on the right, you can actually filter down to those specific students that might need some assistance. So in this case, we go ahead and apply those filters. And I skipped over what they are, but they're Hispanic males, right, who are in need of financial assistance. And what we can see is that there's actually a significant slump that starts to happen with that particular population of students between their sophomore and their junior year. Right? Whereas the population at a whole retains at about 83.5% from first term to second term, we can see that that's down to 76.6% for our male Hispanic students on financial aid, and down to 58% from 68% in the third term, and further down the line from there. So this definitely is something where we have historically underperformed compared to our benchmarking, compared to our population as a whole. The good news is with the Starfish Analytics, you can actually export this data and take it with you to the meeting, right? So you can give a copy to everyone, and you can all work from the position of knowledge, right? Knowing that here's how we've performed historically compared to our counterparts, and all really look at a workshop opportunity to explore what we're going to do about that information. And so this is just a roll-up of that table that you can export. And you can see that that actual differential in our filtered population of Hispanic male first-gen financial aid eligible students versus all students. And on average, that gap between the second and the seventh semester is almost 10%. And now, while the past is a good indicator of future performance, it's not the only one that we have. So we're also, at the same time, modeling the students that you have on campus to say, what is their likelihood to persist term to term in the future, right? Over that 10-year period, we launched a lot of initiatives to help these students. Have we closed the gap at all? And how much have we closed the gap? And so this is our Student Explorer report. On the left, similar to the benchmarks report, you have the unfiltered student population. And on the right, you have the filtered student population. And what we do is we take that information and we utilize it to predict future performance across 4 key metrics. One is retention score. How likely are they to come back one term to the next? Velocity, what is their momentum versus prior completers? Credit ratio, earned versus completed, and GPA. And we can see that across all of those 4 key benchmarks, this student population is underperforming compared to our total student population. What's interesting, right, is that we have closed the gap, right? And so it went from 10% to around 4%, actually should say 4%, right? So we actually have done a good job. Some of our initiatives must be working, right? Because we went from a 10% historic differential to now a 3 to 4% historic differential. But let's say we want to close that gap completely. In order to do that, we need to know what are the specific characteristics, so the profile of a student that are things that they can't change, right? I can't necessarily change my socioeconomic status when I come into the institution. But also, what are the behaviors that they're exhibiting? Perhaps withdrawing from courses, starting at a different or later time in the academic year. What are those specific things that are actually causing them to fall behind? And so this is our retention predictors report. And so you can see on the left-hand side, those are the items that are actually weighing the student down in terms of their retention or their performance at the institution. So things like no velocity, right? They're not completing any courses. They have a low ongoing GPA. They've completed less than 50% of their DevEd courses. They have a low credit ratio. They're a non-degree student, or perhaps they started the academic year later than our traditional students. What you can also do is filter that population a little bit more and look at, on the right-hand side, there's a slider to look at the murky middle, perhaps, or look at the bottom 50% of students, or perhaps look at the top 20% and try to model what high-performing students look like. But what you can also do is actually see the number of predicted stop-outs by those individual factors, right? So that's the column on the far right in the chart. So the fact that I have a low credit ratio for some of my students is actually going to predict, that low credit ratio predicts 52 stop-outs out of 142 students. These are the actual tangible results of if I do nothing, right? If I ramp no resources to meet these students, I'm expecting to lose anywhere between 32 and 52 of those students, depending on the specific factor. So imagine if we could actually take these items, these retention predictors, right, and the predicted stop-outs, and actually ramp resources to those students before they run into obstacles to let them know that we have these resources available to meet them. We could potentially impact 10 stop-outs per year or per term, would actually improve their 6-year grad rate and have major financial implications as well. So now let's talk about what interventions and support systems are in place to actually help this cohort. And so this is our intervention inventory, formerly known as our student success matrix. And so what this does is it takes all the interventions that you have across your campus. On average, by the way, there's 100 to 200 different interventions at each campus that we go to. And it aligns them to the completion by design framework out of the Gates Foundation, which says that for those specific risk characteristics and behaviors, you should have targeted interventions at all points of the student life cycle. So at connection, when they first learn about the institution, or at entry, when they're first getting onboarded to your institution, at progression, right? So from 0 or to 80% complete, and then at completion, right? What are we doing to push them over the finish line? You can also run a report on these items to look at those specific cohorts of students that we're targeting. So in this case, our male Hispanic population, our financial aid eligible population, and what we can do is generate a report of all of the interventions that we have at our institution to support those students. And so in this case, we can see a few different interventions that were targeted at this population. One of the items that we noticed is lunch and learn. So we decided to dig a little bit deeper into that, right? Dr. Moore, being new to the institution, is not sure about the efficacy of lunch and learn, right? She wants to know what the impact of that intervention has been. So she can see how long they've been doing this particular intervention, the estimated number of students affected in the last year, how they're measuring success for that intervention. What's also impactful and something that we feel makes a difference in our solution and can potentially impact your institution as well is the ability to mark those interventions as shareable. And what that will do is actually ramp those interventions to our entire population of 400 plus higher ed institutions that are using our platform. So instead of starting from the beginning, right, I want to be able to run that report and say, what are institutions that are doing really, really well with the student population doing? What interventions are they offering? So that I don't have to reinvent the wheel at my institution every time I'm trying to target a specific population and offer them resources. And so Dr. Moore says, I remember, when we implemented the Lunch and Learn, it seems like it's available, but did it work? Is it working this year? How can I know whether this is a successful intervention strategy or not? Seems kind of dubious. Are they coming to learn at lunchtime? If we're feeding them free lunch, they might just be coming for that. So I want to know, is that actually available, and who received that service, right? Is it actually reaching the intended audience, and is it having an impact? So for those of you that are familiar with Starfish, you know that we have a group of services that are available to the student. You saw this a little bit earlier as their success network. And a success network is simply a collection of resources that are targeted at a student population that we think that will help them or be impactful to their success at our institution. And so here you can see, oh, there's Lunch and Learn in my services and catalog. It's clearly enabled. It's something that is visible within Starfish. Here are the actual members of my institution that are supporting that initiative and effort. And I can run a report that will give me all of that student population or cohort that has actually taken advantage of that specific service in whatever time frame or term that I determined, right? So for fall of 2017, I can run a report and I will get an Excel list of all of the students that actually took advantage of that intervention, right? So I can walk into that meeting and say, yeah, we targeted this specific group of population, and only 5 of them actually used this in the last term. By the way, we're spending $75,000 a year on lunch and learns, and we impacted 5 of the students that we intended to help. Is this an effective use of our time or strategy? And so lastly, we want to talk about a little bit about program design and what are the obstacles to a student as they start them. And so this is our Course Explorer report, and it's our summary of courses, right? And this is all filterable by program, by department, by campus. And so this allows you to see the actual tangible impact of students that do not retain and their performance in the course. So on the right-hand side, you can see, and towards the middle, actually, you see the C or better retain column. So for that college writing course that we talked about earlier that potentially Julian would struggle with, I can see that 88% of the students that get a C or better come back, but only 65% that don't get a C or better come back. I'm physically losing 13 of those students every term out of 95 or out of 80. That's a lot, right? And so what can we do to kind of shore that up? And what we can do is, by being able to roll that up by the program or by the department, we can see that at a higher level for each department or program at our institution. So if you want to just look at our STEM majors, right, so our science, technology, engineering, and math students, we can see that 4 out of the 5 courses that those students struggle with are STEM. Do we have faculty progress surveys going out in those particular courses and sections? Do we have LMS system flags being generated? Because we are integrated with the learning management systems, so Blackboard, Moodle, D2L, Canvas, we can ensure that anytime a student doesn't show up to class or they bomb their first big test, that we're ramping resources to meet them. How are we suggesting interventions to those students in a timely manner, right? Are we reaching them with the resources immediately to meet their need? Are we allowing them to know about them earlier on, right? So that we eliminate their ability to say, I didn't even know we had a math tutoring center, right? Can we reach them as part of that onboarding process? What we can also do is run what we call our intervention analysis report. And so this will actually answer those questions for you. By running the intervention analysis report, you can create benchmarks to see what success in a successful course looks like. So at the bottom of this particular screen, you'll see enrollments in a course and final course outcomes. So for a benchmark course, we can see that we had 57 enrollments in the course, and we got 49 of the students to the finish line. We completed 3 surveys for the section. We raised 27 flags. We had 53 meetings. We created 4 referrals. We sent 5 kudos, and we raised 27 flags. That's really what a successful intervention strategy looks like, right? We're getting the vast majority of the students to the finish line. But for those STEM courses, we had 27 enrollments. We only got 16 of those students to the finish line. We lost almost a third of them. We weren't completing surveys on time, and we minimally intervened overall with flags, kudos, referrals, and meetings. So this might be an opportunity, right, to go back to that team and look at our opportunity to optimize our intervention strategy around our STEM courses. So Dr. Moore heads into the meeting with her team, and what she understands is the past, right? She understands that we've historically had a 10% swing or difference in this particular cohort of students that we want to address. But she also understands the future, the probability of them succeeding. That gap has narrowed, right? It's an opportunity to praise and provide kudos to her team to say, we've done a really great job of intervening with the student population, but I think that we have the opportunity to do a little bit more. I want to eliminate this gap completely. It allows us to have some focus, but also to celebrate our wins. We also know the reasons that those students are struggling, right? What are the specific factors that are contributing to those stopouts? And we also know the number of predicted stopouts that are going to happen based on those specific factors. We know which interventions we've targeted towards those risk reasons, predicted stopouts, and those particular cohorts of students. We know whether they're enabled or visible within Starfish, and we know how many students actually took advantage of those particular interventions within Starfish. We know the obstacle courses. We know what they're going to struggle with. We know where we should focus if we're going to look at ramping alert and monitoring and intervention strategies. And so we walk into that meeting with that list of second-year Hispanic males who participated in that Lunch and Learn in fall of 2017. So with all of that in hand, right, Dr. Moore and the team at Succeed Community College are really able to make a significant amount of progress toward transforming their campus. They identified a cohort of several thousand students who were at risk within their institution. They tailored specific strategies to intervene and meet those specific needs. They were able to eliminate barriers such as obstacle courses and scale supports to meet the needs of not just the at-risk students, but all students. They can streamline the student onboarding process, including new tools for self-assessment, career exploration, and registration, all within a single threaded process. The leading returns were really positive. So pretty soon, the new Shark Success Plan became a best practice to share with their peers within Starfish. This really motivated the team at Succeed, and Dr. Moore saw it as a positive sign when she gathered her team again and they began to ask the question, what next? So I think we wanted to leave about 15 minutes for Q&A. So I think we did that well. So Jason or Nick, I wanted to turn it over to you guys to start the Q&A process.
So if there are any questions, the QA tool, which appears at the bottom of the Zoom application, you can go ahead and submit questions in there, and we'll go through each of them as they come in. It's a quiet group so far.
Yeah, just as an FYI, by the way, for those of you who would like to share what you've learned today and wish that some of your colleagues had been in attendance for the webinar will be on CCA's website within the next week or so, or within this week or so. So if you have any questions, or just like want to share what the webinar, other people to see it, then please stop by our CCA's website, and you should be able to see it there in, like I said, by the end of this week. So there are 2 questions now, or 3 questions rather.
Yeah, so it looks like some of the questions are about the Starfish packaging and how the models are made. So we do have a number of different packages. I would certainly encourage you to reach out to us if you have questions. Our packages are designed to help institutions achieve whatever their primary goals are. So we have packages that are focused on guided pathways in particular. We also have packages that are focused on institutional analytics and gaining those insights, and certainly have the comprehensive or enterprise package, including all of those things. My personal email address is gretchen@hobsons.com, so you can reach out to me and I can get you connected with the right person. But I think those are some great questions, and we'd love to learn about what your institutions are trying to accomplish and which package would be best suited for what you're looking to do.
So there's a couple of other questions. One is around, is predictive analytics available with course selection? Yeah, so you can actually recommend, I didn't show this today, but you can actually recommend certain courses to students as part of the planning process. So we kind of did a demo on Rails. Obviously, that's a little easier in a scenario like this, but the planning capabilities are fully comprehensive and configurable, meaning I could have an elective offering, in which case the student might have to choose from a group of courses, and I can actually bubble up or recommend certain courses based on that. So, that obviously our plan would be that you utilize institutional analytics to say, hey, I may not put my STEM students into liberal arts electives, right? I might actually try to choose something that's more appropriate for them, and then you can actually recommend those things directly within the system as well. Someone asked around implementation of analytics. It's generally speaking around a 12-week implementation, so it's not super intensive. It involves getting the data out of your student information system, and so we obviously help you with that as project consultants as well. But we can generally get you up and running on analytics within a 12-week time frame and have you actually making tangible insights in change at your institution fairly quickly. Someone asked about configurability of services as well as message templates. They're all completely configurable. So all of that information, all the services, all the messages that go out are at the control of the institution. We have a strategic consulting practice that will help you understand where to start, but then we also have a project consulting practice or an implementation consulting practice that will help you configure, construct those message templates, construct those services to meet your specific needs at the institution. Someone asked around bookmarks. Yeah, you can absolutely bookmark all of those filters. There's actually a bookmark button. So that one's easy. Yeah, you can bookmark the information and come back to those filters on a regular basis.
So there's a question about, do we get applicants or students that complete the intake survey, interest inventory, and the parent survey? So, and the follow-up question is, how do we get applicants and students to complete those? I think it is, again, something our strategic consulting practice can help you determine. We've had really good adoption by both students and faculty members. Oftentimes institutions are surprised to hear our adoption numbers. And part of that is because we work with institutions on what would work for them. So whether they're doing it as part of their student onboarding, or if they're working to incorporate it as part of the application process, or whatever makes the most sense. But the short answer is yes, we do, and we can certainly work with you on best practices on how we see the best results.
Someone asked around availability via degree planner or another suite. Again, that just depends on what modules you'd like to use, but we would work with you on what works for your institution. So we have institutions at various levels of maturity and live on all of our platforms. So if you were looking at actual planning functionality, right, meaning I need a student to be able to go in, select a program of study, and us to build them kind of a guided pathways, CCA approved guided pathways plan, then yeah, you would need our degree planner suite for that. However, like the course level and the section level analytics, all of that is available even without our academic planning tools. So you can still get all of those insights, and if you're using a different degree planner or a different academic planner, you can still get those same insights and utilize a different planner to ramp to that need. One of the things that we really are focused on is we don't like the idea of walling you into one specific technology, right? We would be happy to sell you an enterprise package, and obviously we have that, and we presented some of that today. But we really want this to be an ecosystem, and we understand that it's a complex ecosystem, and that institutional change is hard, and biting off that big of a slice of the apple at one time can be challenging. So we structure our project as well as our strategic consulting around that, but we also want to be a good partner that leverages whatever systems that you have on campus today. So there is a question around colleague integration. So yeah, so we've done degree planner integrations with Colleague, with Banner, with PeopleSoft. So it's pretty standard implementation. It is one of the more difficult implementations, right? Academic planning in general, just because of the nature of the complexity of it. But we have many years of experience doing that. And so, you know, we have many schools, including some of our larger schools, especially in California, as part of the California system that utilize Colleague, that we are alive with academic planning on. One of the questions was around gender. If you're gender neutral or non-gender conforming, how do you include me in reports? So I believe there is essentially a third option, but I'll confirm that with our team internally as well. So there's a male, female, and then a like a no answer option or a non option. that isn't mandatory in our data set either. So good question.
I think that's all the questions that we have so far in the chat and the Q&A. Richard and I are certainly open to sticking around. If you have some additional questions, we'd love to hear them.
Yeah, Gretchen, there are a couple of email or questions that came into the chat, not into the QA. I don't know if you saw those.
I think we addressed those as well. If I missed one, though, by all means, feel free to let us know.
Okay. Yep.
There is a question that just came into the Q&A that I think might be for either you or Nicholas in terms of where they can find the recorded webinar.
Yeah, so we will be sending an email to all the people who actually attended or actually even registered for the webinar. And that email will include a URL that will be on our website where the webinar will be posted. So you'll be able to not only view the webinar one more time, but we also usually include a link directly to Hobsons, or Starfish by Hobsons as well. So you don't have to go very far. The URL will provide you with pretty much everything you need.
Richard, there's a question about Degree Planner integrating with registration via student self-serve on Colleague.
Yeah, so we're actually working on implementing that right now. So we have a banner school and a colleague school both doing a tandem implementation. It's like a race to see who's going to be completed first as our first launch. The banner school is testing now. Colleague, we do have a colleague integration through our partnership with a company called End-to-End Integrations, who provides our registration functionality. And so they do a colleague implementation as well. Colleague is a little different, right? Because they have these underlying services. They don't have an API natively as part of Colleague, right? It's pretty ancient technology. So depending on what your specific colleague setup is, there could be a couple of extra weeks of setup that we have to do, but Colleague is definitely something that we're well familiar with and that we can provide registration capabilities through. So our initial offering for registration, good question, is Colleague, Banner, and PeopleSoft, and Genzamar, I believe. But again, if you have specific needs or use cases, we would love to talk to you more about them. Someone asked a question about API. Yeah, so we provide through a partnership with our vendor End-to-End. We provide an API layer to connect your student information system with Starfish for the purposes of course registration. So you control and configure that API. So it's just a gateway that says which fields are you going to give Starfish access to for registration. And then we make a call simply to that gateway, and that gateway communicates with your student information system correctly. And if you have more technical questions around that, we could spend an hour just on that piece, and we have. So we would love to dig into that a little bit more with you around your specific needs.
Right. And as we conclude, this is Danifa Wellston with Complete College America. We just would be remiss if we didn't take the opportunity to thank our friends and partners from Starfish by Hobsons. We don't take the technology seal of approval lightly. I feel like there are many institutions across the country that are looking to do important work and ensuring that they make the right decisions around technology and ensuring that they have technology solutions that can help them meet their larger Complete College America strategies or larger guided pathway strategies is something that's very important. And so we think that Starfish by Hobsons has really nailed it on this, and we look forward to continuing to work with them. I think we've shared earlier that the webinar will be available to all of the individuals that registered. but there'll also be a few things on the CCA web portal that may be helpful to you. In the very near future, we'll be highlighting some Starfish by Hobsons case studies. So a lot of ways that you can continue to stay connected, as well as connect with some of the individuals that you heard on this webinar. So we're excited to continue that. Jason, I don't know if you want to close us out with any final thoughts.
Just ditto what you said. Thank you very much to everyone attended, and to Gretchen and Richard. We hope you found this information helpful. Hobsons is doing a lot of work and have been a great partner. So we should have the recorded webinar out shortly, and you'll all receive an email with a link to it. And I think that's everything on my end. So thanks again for attending, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.